Hey guys, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the second half of this Middle-earth 4K collection. We're going to be looking at the Hobbit Trilogy on 4K Blu-ray. I'll talk about the visuals, the audio, some of what you get in the packaging here, and what to expect from this release in this review. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to subscribe. I have so much content coming in the next couple of months. Really exciting 4K reviews, movie room tours, TV reviews, home theater reviews, all kinds of stuff. So make sure you're subscribed, have your notifications on, and with that being said, let's jump right into this review. So The Hobbit, this is going to be available next week. This is going to be available December 1st, 2020 in the United States. This comes out at the same time as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so if you haven't watched that 4K review, you can find that on my channel. It's my latest video before this one. So regardless of what you think of this movie and this trilogy, The Hobbit, it was kind of stretched out, it was expanded. Did we really need, almost as many hours to tell the Lord of the Rings story as we did to tell the Hobbit story? No, but they expanded on different elements in the movie, and they did some things that expanded on the Middle-earth universe, which were cool for fans. But ultimately, your opinions on the movie aside, we're going to take a look at the visuals and the audio and talk about those things. So starting with the visuals, again, you've got all three of these movies restored in 4K with Dolby Atmos. Now, according to IMDb, these are all still 2K digital intermediates, but then I'm reading online, obviously, articles talking about the restoration and things that were posted by Lord of the Rings themselves, and Sean Astin in his update video that Peter Jackson was remastering all of these. So I'm not 100% sure whether that remastering meant that he actually did a new 4K digital intermediate, or he just remastered the 2K digital intermediate up to 4K and did an up conversion. I'm really not 100% sure on that, but either way, these are visually stunning movies, and they were pretty stunning on Blu-ray, but there were CGI problems. The CGI on The Hobbit was arguably worse than the Lord of the Rings CGI, and it shouldn't have been because it was 10 years later. A lot of the production on this was rushed. They rushed it a lot more than Lord of the Rings did, and so you could see some of that in the CGI. Now, luckily, a lot of that has been corrected here. Peter Jackson and his team went back in and actually re-rendered some of the CGI, did some new color grading to make it mesh better with, the background. And that's the biggest thing with CGI and a digital image is that on a 4K, the CGI is usually rendered at a lower resolution and is color graded differently. And you can really tell, that's really poor CGI. They fixed a lot of that. It's not perfect. I would say it's not as good as they did on the Lord of the Rings set, but it does make for a much better viewing experience, so that's great. Now, the Dolby Vision on this is also, again, very impressive like it was on Lord of the Rings. Some of the best Dolby Vision and color grading that I've seen. It looks a lot better than the Blu-ray. The black levels are a lot better, and this is a very clean image. I mean, again, most of this was digitally shot. There is a lot of CGI in these movies as to, comparing to Lord of the Rings, where I think there was certainly more practical effects. This is pretty CGI heavy, this trilogy, so it looks very clean and it's very digital compared to Lord of the Rings, which had a little bit more grain and a little bit more of a filmic feel to it. So just two different experiences, but if you've seen the movies, you know to expect that anyway. Now, the big question with these that a lot of people have is when this came out into theaters, they were released at 48 frames per second. So if you know quickly about movies, most of them are released at 24 frames per second. That's kind of the industry standard. Peter Jackson with these Hobbit movies messed with 48 frames per second, so he doubled the frame rate, tried to make for smoother action, just tried to make for a different, he basically tried to overhaul what people were doing and get them to adopt this. But a lot of people, when they saw this in theaters, did not like it. It was hit or miss, depending on who you ask. And then sometimes films are shot at 60 frames per second. Gemini Man and Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk by Ang Lee, those two movies, they were both shot at 60 frames per second. Now, 4K disc can only handle either 24 frames or 60 frames. It can't do 48. And so these movies are just at the regular 24. They didn't get converted to 60, so they're at their regular 24 frames per second frame rate. So if you saw this in theaters, you may notice a difference there, but again, you would have seen that on Blu-ray as well. So it shouldn't be surprising from a home theater experience, But if the last time you saw these was in a movie theater, they were showing them at a different frame rate, so it may be a different experience. Here you're getting the standard 24 frames because 4K does not support that higher frame rate unless it went up to 60. So overall, the whole trilogy as a set, I mean, it's impressive. It really is an impressive release. I still like the Lord of the Rings trilogy better, both as movies and visually. I think there's a larger leap from the Blu-ray of Lord of the Rings, especially with some of the color correcting that was done on Fellowship, the new CGI rendering. There was a lot that was done on that makes it a bigger leap from Blu-ray to 4K, but these are still really impressive. It's reference quality stuff all around, all 6 movies from this Middle-earth collection so far. Can't complain about that. If you have Dolby Vision, you'll really see a difference with that as well, but even the standard HDR color grading is pretty good. So visually, it's very good. I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5, whereas I think Lord of the Rings are a solid 5 out of 5. Now, audio-wise, we've got Dolby Atmos on all 3 of these again, which is great. And it seems like it's a little bit more of an active track than Lord of the Rings was. I still prefer Lord of the Rings because that score is great, and the highlights, the high points of the Lord of the Rings Atmos tracks, I think are still better than The Hobbit, but it's kind of apples and oranges. They're so close to each other, the difference is really negligible. But The Hobbit's probably a more active track. There's a little bit more going on, and it seems like they may have done a little more with height effects. Maybe it's 10 years newer, so they had a better source from an audio perspective to work with. They kind of shot it and originally mixed it for more modern equipment and more modern theaters. I'm just spitballing. I don't really know that, but it does feel like it was just mixed a little bit better, that you get more use of the heights, you get more use of the surrounds, and it's an overall really solid active mix. All your speakers are going to get a workout, and the bass is pumping throughout this thing. So it's a solid reference Atmos track, again, much like Lord of the Rings was. It's just a little bit of a different experience. Again, I keep saying that, but these movies really, they truly are, even though they're by the same director, 10 years apart and covering, you know, essentially the same story. The Hobbit leads into Lord of the Rings. It's that same timeline. They're such different experiences so that it's hard to put them in one hand and say, oh yeah, Hobbit equals Lord of the Rings. The way they were shot and everything is just so different. So it was an interesting review anyway. Now your packaging, pretty standard, much like the Lord of the Rings. You've got this slipcase that opens up into this 6-disc set here, not 9 discs, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you've got the theatrical version and then the extended version of each movie. Now, the difference here and why there's 6 discs instead of 9 is because the extended versions were not split across 2 discs, meaning they didn't take up as much space. They stayed under the 100 gigabytes. Now, you do get a digital code for all these movies, which should redeem in 4K, and no special features on this release. The special features are in the Middle Earth collection, which is coming out, supposed to be coming out in the summer of next year, 2021. And then there are going to be Blu-ray restorations of these as well. So if you haven't jumped to 4K yet, maybe you can't justify the price, keep an eye out. They're going to be Blu-ray restorations, so that's something you could always jump to as well. So Warner Brothers and Peter Jackson and his team and Weta Digital and all those guys did an excellent job. It was well worth the wait. We've been waiting a while for these 2 trilogies, but it was worth it. The payoff was worth it. I had a really good time with them. They are Atmos reference, they are visual reference, they are reference discs all around. And although I don't think as many of you are probably as interested in the Hobbit trilogy as Lord of the Rings, I'll leave a link down in the description. You can purchase it. That helps support my channel. You can also find it at many other retailers, and there is a steelbook version available as well, so that's something to look for. But I do think it would be worth it if you are just looking for some of the best 4K discs and you're not too worried about the quality of these movies. If you're a Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien fan, you're going to want to pick this up. It's as good as it's looked, and that improved CGI may sneaky be the best part about this, that they went back and tweaked that, and in a good way. Like when you start talking about tweaking CGI, that always makes me nervous. I think of George Lucas, I think of Star Wars, but they're not inserting CGI characters and doing weird things to change the movie. They're taking what was originally inserted, remastering it, recolor grading, doing things like that to make it just blend better. And that's something I think a lot of other directors, studios, restoration teams could learn from. I think that was an important part of what makes these stand apart from other movies that may be CGI heavy from this time period that get put on 4K and have some issues. Even King Kong, which was Peter Jackson's movie from 2005, I thought that CGI was much more noticeable and poor compared to these releases. So that's just an interesting note, but that could be a big reason to upgrade. So again, thank you for watching this. Luckily, I shouldn't say luckily because it's not a good thing, but when you have coronavirus Thanksgiving and you're off from work all week and these two trilogies show up, it's like Christmas in November. I've basically spent the last few days where I wasn't eating turkey, just watching these movies and really loving them. I'm going to rewatch Lord of the Rings because I loved that experience so much. I'm going to watch it again with my wife. Those 4K movies look incredible. And I just watched Fellowship again on 4K for the second time. And I gotta tell you, like that may be a disc I keep popping back in because it is just gorgeous. The Two Towers we're gonna watch again tonight or tomorrow. And obviously we're gonna go through the whole trilogy once more. So it's one that I think you'll rewatch. That's a big key to buying the movies and spending $90 on movies. Do they have rewatchability? And Lord of the Rings certainly does. And The Hobbit, I probably won't revisit as much as Lord of the Rings, but there's certainly some rewatchability there if you want to do compare them to maybe the Star Wars prequels and the Star Wars original trilogy. That's how I kind of view them. There's always going to be that love for the prequels that a lot of people have, but it's hit or miss. And obviously a lot of people love that original trilogy. But you kind of tie them all together and you have a nice 6-movie set, reference quality video, audio. And, if you do want to wait, that Middle-earth collection will have all those special features for you. So it's a good set. Link down in the description if you want to pick it up. Really appreciate Warner Brothers again for sending this, supporting the channel, and for all of you for watching. That Lord of the Rings video has been doing huge numbers, so I really appreciate all the support there and all the new subscribers who have joined since I posted that. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and check out all the links down in my description. I'll talk to you soon. Keep watching videos, keep watching 4K, support physical media. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in a bit.